Hey everyone, want to welcome all my thumb buds out there, my subscribers. Thanks for joining me today. It is January the 7th as I'm recording this, and it is cold outside. Too cold and the ground is too wet to be working out in the garden. But it's a great day to be planning for my summer and spring garden. I can't wait until it warms up. I'm not a big fan of cold weather. So I'm going to be doing some dreaming today. Dreaming about warmer weather and planning ahead for the future. Planning ahead makes all the difference. And in this video, I'm going to show you how I plan my garden and introduce you to some tools and techniques that help me take my garden to the next level. And they will help you make the most of your garden this year. So let's dig in. It's time to think about what I'm going to do when the weather warms up a bit. As you can see behind me, it's been really cold. It got down below 20 degrees, which is really rare for where I live here in Northwest Georgia. But it got down below 20 degrees and I had to cover up all of my vegetables that are growing in the garden. Even these vegetables like broccoli and collards and kale and cabbage and onions and garlic, they're all vegetables that are made for growing in cold weather. However, when it gets down this cold, it makes me a little bit nervous. So I covered them all up and looks like they were all done pretty good. We've got a few more days of cold weather, so we'll be keeping an eye on it. But right now it's time for us to think about what we're going to grow when the weather warms up a bit. What do I want to grow? How much will I grow? When and where do I need to plant it all? And how long will it be before it harvests? How much will I be able to fit in the various garden plots that I have? We'll be answering all of those questions as I plan today, and I want to show you how you can do it as well. So the first thing I do is think about what types and varieties of plants I want to grow. I like to grow things my family wants to eat. I also want to store up enough food to get us by just in case there's some shortages in the grocery store. So those are the two types of food that I focus on in my garden. I like to grow unique varieties that are a bit different from what I can get in the grocery store. For instance, I can easily buy white Irish potatoes in the grocery store, but I have never seen purple Irish potatoes at the grocery store where I shop. So that's something that I want to grow myself. It'll be unique, and it's something probably not going to be able to get anywhere else unless I grow it myself. I like to start by talking to different people about the varieties that they grow, what they like about them, how do they taste, how well do they perform. Then I do a little research on my own, and eventually I narrow it down to the types and varieties of food that I want to grow. And one of the limiting factors is simply space. I don't have enough space to grow everything, so I've got to make some choices. Once I have a list of everything, it's time to get into the details and to plan it all out. Now, a lot of people do this on a piece of paper or on a notebook, but today I want to show you a free tool that anyone can use, that I use all the time, that makes planning my garden so much easier. It's a tool called Google Sheets. Google Sheets is a spreadsheet program included as part of the free web-based Google Docs Editors Suite offered by Google. If you have a computer or a smartphone with internet access, you can use Google Sheets for free. Now, not everyone likes using computers, so maybe this isn't for you if you don't like to use technology. You can do what I'm going to show you on a piece of paper. It's just more work. But if you like computers and you feel comfortable using them, Google Sheets can be a great tool for you. Plus, since everything is stored in the cloud, you can have access to your online garden notebook from virtually anywhere, as long as you have a computer or a smartphone and internet access. All right, so I'm going to show you on my computer screen how I use Google Sheets to organize and plan ahead for my garden. So let's take a look on the screen. So first thing you want to do, you just want to open up your web browser. I use Google Chrome. You're going to go to google.com. And then over here on the right top hand corner, you see this little grid, these 9 little dots, and you scroll over it and it says Google Apps. Left click on that, and you come down here and you see all of the different Google apps: YouTube, Maps, Search, Gmail, your calendar, and one of those apps is Drive. You're going to click that. If you have a Gmail account you have access to a free cloud storage system on Google Drive. It comes free with 10 gigabytes of storage. And I used that for probably 10 years before I ran out of space. I use Google Drive a lot at church for different things that I'm doing, collaborating with other staff members and that sort of thing. So I use it a lot, and it took me 10 years to use up my storage space. Then I paid to have an upgrade to 100 gigabytes. So you can see on the screen that I have used 25 gigabytes of my 100 gigs. But I'm using it to upload a lot of really big files like videos and podcasts and things like that. So I'm using it up fast. But you get 10 gigabytes for free, and that's more than enough for most people. Now in that, you're going to go to create a new file. Up here where it has the plus sign, you click New, and then you can go down here, you can create Google Doc, which is basically like Microsoft Word. It's a word processor. Or you can click on Google Sheets, which is like a spreadsheet, kind of like Microsoft Excel. So you can click that, and it just brings up a blank sheet. And you can go up here and you can title it whatever you want. So you can title it Your Wonderful Garden Plans. Okay? And then you can go down here and you can just start filling in anything that you want, keeping track of all your notes. Now I've already created one of these for last year's garden and then for this year's garden. So I'll open the one I had for last year's garden just to kind of give you an idea of what I had going on. So in that, I had a map that just gave a general overview of everything that I was growing. And you can see here I had a raised bed full of peanuts. I had a raised bed with onions and some watermelons and cantaloupes, and I had peppers growing over here. And then you could just kind of scroll around and see all the different things I had growing. Even in my front yard, what I call the annex, I had 4 hay bale planters, which are represented here, and these are all the different things that I had growing in them. Now, along with this, I also, down at the bottom, you'll see where it says Maine and seed starts and the June map. These are individual sheets within this one file. So you can have multiple sheets in that file. One of those sheets is where I kept track of all my rain. So from every day when I would get a reading from my rain gauge, I would write it down over here, and I could just keep track of how much rain I was getting every week. And that would tell me if I needed to supplement by watering my garden. So, in a week when I've only got 0.4 inches of rain, I want to get at least an inch of rain. And so I would water extra from my water hose to make sure that my plants were getting all that they needed to get. But then on a week like in February, in the middle of February, I got 2.2 inches of rain, and that was more than enough for my garden. And so I didn't have to do any watering that week at all. And then you can go through, you can see 1 week I got 6.3 inches of rain. That was a really wet week, way more rain than I needed. But I can go through and track all of that, keep track of all of that throughout the entire year. Very helpful information. Over on my main sheet, I have a listing of all of the different things that I grew. For instance, I planted some Adirondack blue potatoes. Before I ever planted them, I decided that I wanted to plant them and that it was going to be best to plant them in March in the springtime, and then you could plant them again in August. Well, I planted mine on March the 3rd. Also determined that it was going to take about 85 days to get those plants to harvest, so I could harvest them. So I kind of knew ahead of time that that meant that those plants would, if I planted them in March, they would probably be harvested in June. That told me when to expect a work day to harvest those, but it also told me when that space would be available to replant something else. So after I planted potatoes, I grew mine in 5-gallon buckets. After I planted them in that 5-gallon bucket and then I harvested them, I could turn around and use that 5-gallon bucket to grow jambalaya okra. And so that's what I did. I also, and then I wrote down on my spreadsheet that I actually harvested them on June the 12th. And I estimated that I would get 1 to 3 pounds per bucket. And I actually ended up getting 1.5 pounds per bucket. So that was very helpful just to kind of keep that. Now that I know that from my experience last year, when I plant them again this year, then I will know probably will get about 1.5 pounds. And if I get less than that, I'll know that I didn't do as good as I did last year. If I get more than that, then I'll know that whatever I did this year was helpful and made it a good harvest. So that was my spreadsheet from last year. And you can just sort of see all the different things that I grew. Some of these are still in the garden growing right now as we speak. Now, let's take a look at my 2022 garden. Look at the spreadsheet. I created a new spreadsheet, a new file so I could start over fresh. Used what I did last year as a template, but then now I have all of the things that I'm growing right now or that I plan to be growing. So, for instance, we'll just fill one of these out together. But first, let's take a look at an example. I want to grow corn this spring, something that I didn't grow last year, but I want to grow it this year. I want to grow some sweet corn and for eating straight off the cob and maybe put some up in the freezer. I also want to grow some field corn so that I can make my own cornmeal. So I've been studying on different varieties, and the two that I have chosen that I want to plant are Yellowstone sweet corn for the sweet variety and Jimmy red field corn for the cornmeal variety. So looking in my garden, we see that I have my June layout is going to have my field corn right over here. So I'll have 3 20-foot rows, and each row is going to have 2 plants per foot. So we'll do that. That'll be 20 feet, and then you have to space them out 1 foot apart. So that means that'll be 20 feet of corn, and I'm doing 2. So that makes it 40 feet of corn, and I'm gonna do that. You notice on the screen I have 3 of those rows, 3 of those double rows, which means I'm gonna have 20, 40, 60, 80, 120 plants, individual plants of corn, which means I'm gonna need at least 120 seeds. So if we go over to the HaasTools.com website, which is where I plan to buy these corn seeds from. It's a great company. Did really well for me last year. And let's put in Jimmy Red Corn. And you see here, this is what I will be buying, Jimmy Red Corn. So let's take a look at it. One seed pack costs $4.99, and we'll have 150 seeds in it. So that's more than enough for what I need to do. So we go down here and we look at some of the stats about it. See that it direct seeds. You don't need to transplant it. Plant it directly in the ground. Plant it after the last frost. For my area, the last frost is going to be April the 13th, which is actually a Thursday. So I think I'm going to plant those on probably that Saturday. Let's just say 4/15. We go back to the website. We see that it takes 85 days to maturity. I'm not sure what that 110 means. So maybe it means that it's between 85 and 110 days. That's the range for how long it takes to come to maturity. So we will put that in here, 85 to 110 days. And that means the estimated harvest date will be July the 15th. So I'll have those in those rows until that date. And then after that, I'll be pulling them up, and that space will be available to plant something else, maybe another round of corn or another round of something else. So when I actually plant them, I will come back in here and I will fill in on the spreadsheet. You know, maybe I didn't get to do it on that Saturday. Maybe I had to wait an extra couple of days before I got it in the ground. So we'll put that there. When I actually harvest it, I'll put that date here. Maybe it came in a little bit early, so I'll put in 7/13-22. That's the date I harvested. But of course I haven't done any of that yet, so I'm going to take that back off. We'll wait to fill those in. Now we're going to estimate how much corn do I think I'm going to get from that? How much cornmeal will I be able to make? Well, I just did a simple Google search and found out that you're going to get about half a pound of corn per 8-inch ear of corn. We'll just use that as a guide. It's an estimate, it doesn't have to be exact. So if I'm going to get 1 ear of corn off of each plant, that would mean I would get 120 ears of corn, and that means that would end up being about 60 pounds of corn kernels and 60 pounds of cornmeal. Again, this is just an estimate. All right, now let's take a look. We're going to do Yellowstone sweet corn. Let's take a look at the stats on this one. We'll have to get a big pack of those, or no, we can get 150 seeds for $5 from Hoss Tools. We're going to plant them 1 inch deep. We can plant these ones a little bit closer, so 8 inches apart. So if I'm doing double rows, and I've got, let's go back to my chart here and see, I'm going to be planting these in my front yard. And this is 40 feet by, I think it's actually 45 feet by 25 feet. So I can do 45-foot rows. And we got 25 feet in there. So 25 feet, we're going to space them 3 feet apart. I can do about 8 rows in there. So we're going to get 45 times 2 times 8 rows. That's 720 plants. Okay, so if I do that entire plot with the sweet corn, then I can do 720 plants. I don't know if I'm going to do that much. I'll probably split it up and do something else, but let's just assume that I will. So I'll go back to my main sheet, and we're going to say we're going to do 720. So if we do 720, that means I'm going to get 720 ears or half of that is going to be 360 pounds of corn. That's a lot of corn. I'll have to decide. I probably won't do all that, but just for the sake of the video today, let's just say. All right, so we're going to do 75 days until maturity. So that's pretty fast maturing, and it needs to be planted after last frost, which means it can be planted on 4/15/22, and after 75 days, that's going to be May the 15th, June the 15th, and then add in 15 days. So we're talking July the 1st is when that, it's 65 days. So it'll be July the 1st when that's ready. So then we'll do that. And we can go through and do that for all of these different varieties. So as I'm thinking about and talking to people and deciding what I'm going to grow, I put down on my spreadsheet all of these different items that I want to plant. That means I got to find these seeds, and I'm going to go through for all of these different varieties and decide when they're going to need to be planted. My Viking potatoes probably going to be planted probably about March the 1st. My Yukon Golds, my Adirondack Blues, all of those are going to be planted on those days. And so that means I need to get that stuff in by that date in order to be able to plant it in time. So some of these things I need to get on the ball and go ahead and get ordering now. Some of these things can wait. The red snapper's probably not going to go into the ground until maybe, let's say, May the 1st, right? So remember also, a lot of these things are going to be grown as seedlings and then transplanted in the ground. So I might need to get them a little bit earlier. That's why I have another sheet on my Google Sheet where it tells me seed startings, okay? So as I buy something, for instance, I bought sweet agent onions as seeds, and I planted them in seed trays on September the 24th, and then I transplanted them into the ground on 12/1/21. Okay, so that kind of keeps me straight. Over here, just for my convenience, I added in a little chart that I got off of Google. It's just a little chart that tells me the temperatures for the various types of seeds. So when I use my heating mat, I know what temperature to set it on to help those seeds germinate best. I can also go back to my Google Sheet, and I have one little worksheet here that kind of tells me when things need to be planted. So as I look at things, I can kind of go through and see snow peas and radishes. The best time to plant them is you can go ahead and start planting them in February. So, if I do that, then I can go in here and say I started it on February 22nd. And that just kind of gives me an idea. Some things are good to be direct seeded outside. Other things are best to be planted in seed trays on the inside. So you can just kind of go through with all of your different things and decide when those things need to be planted. Watermelons, you can start them in seed trays in March, and then they'll be ready to go in the ground in late May or June. So you can just sort of kind of keep track of it all that way. And actually you can put on here, when is it best to go ahead and transplant these things outdoors? With the chocolate beauty peppers, you start those inside, and in order to have them ready to go in the ground by mid-April, once you get past your frost dates. Over here, I keep track of my estimated frost dates. So my last frost date for the spring is expected to be April the 13th. My first frost date for spring is expected to be October 31st. So all of this information is here at my fingertips, ready to be used. And here's the thing about using Google Sheets as opposed to using a notebook. Notebook works fine as long as you've got that notebook in your hand. But I don't know about you, but I don't carry a notebook around with me everywhere I go. What I do carry around with me everywhere I go is my smartphone. And so I almost always have that with me no matter where I am. And as long as I've got that smartphone with me, I can get on the internet and look up my Google Sheets document, and I have access to all of this information that we're looking at on my computer screen. I can look at it on my phone. I can even edit it on my phone, which is very helpful as I check my rain gauge. I see how much rain we got this morning or yesterday. I always check my rain gauge at the same time every day. It's usually in the morning after the sun comes up. And then I just pull out my phone, beep, beep, beep. I enter in how many inches of rain we had yesterday. It's always there, easy to come by. So that's one of the cool things about using Google Sheets. It's in the cloud. It's everywhere that you are, as long as you have a device that can get on the internet and you have internet access. The other cool thing about it is it does a lot of the calculations for you. And so, it'll add up all the rain totals and do the averages and all of that for you, as long as you tell it how to do it. Proverbs 21:5 says, "Good planning and hard work lead to prosperity, but hasty shortcuts lead to poverty." Another way I've heard this put is, those who fail to plan to fail. I hope you will plan to succeed in your garden this year. And I hope you will take this lesson about planning to heart in every area of your life, not just the garden. Good planning and hard work lead to prosperity. Hasty shortcuts lead to poverty. Now I want to get a little more serious, because Jesus also talked about the importance of planning when it comes to following him. In Luke chapter 14, verse 28, Jesus said, "Don't begin following him until you count the cost. For who would begin construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if there's enough money to finish it?" And in verse 33, he said, "You cannot become my disciple without giving up everything you own." Now that's an interesting statement. Jesus is warning people, before you commit to following me, count how much it's going to cost you. And then he tells people, it's going to cost you everything you own. In fact, he says, you can't follow me without giving up everything you own. Now, that's not a very attractive recruitment strategy. Who wants to give up everything they own? Unless following Jesus is really worth the cost. I've dedicated my life to following Jesus. Everything I have is his. My very soul belongs to Christ. It was already his anyway. I just came to my senses one day and realized it, and let him have everything that was already rightfully his, that he already owned anyway. I was just pretending to myself that I owned it. And I came to my senses, and I finally allowed myself to believe that it is all his, and just to let go and surrender it all to him. And I can tell you, it is so worth it. It is so worth it. Jesus is with me every day. His presence brings me peace and joy no matter what's going on around me. Now, not every day is good, but even on those bad days, I know that he's with me. Even on my worst days, I have a solid faith that I know that he is there. He is with me. His Holy Spirit equips me to do anything he wants me to do. And I always have what I need to live for him. And nothing in this world can defeat me, because Jesus has already won the victory. Even if I die, I have eternal life waiting for me in the kingdom of heaven. Ultimately, I believe Jesus is going to come, bring justice, and fix everything that's broken in this world. So yes, giving up everything I own to follow Jesus was worth it for me. But everyone has to make their own considerations. Everyone has to look at the plan, consider their life, consider what it's worth to them. And you have to decide if it's worth it for you. I think it is. But only you can decide for yourself. I hope you will think about it. And then I hope you'll come and you'll join me as we follow Christ together and we grow and be fruitful.
Thanks for watching. Give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to become a Thumb Bud.